I'm going to once again welcome you both. So it's Quinnton Harris, co-founder and CEO at Retrospect, creative community partner at LaTruck at Fuselier Group. So welcome. Thank you very much. And then Shayne Millington, CCO at McCann, New York. Thank you guys for joining. I try to do a little bit of a background, like, deep dive. I think one of you guys let me in on your Instagram. You probably shouldn't, because I will go through every one of those photographs. But I'm going to start with you, Shayne. So I know you're a runner, and you've done the New York City Marathon.
I have. Not well, but I have.
You did. There's not a lot of people that could say they've done the New York City Marathon. That's insane. You're also a photographer.
I am.
And tell us about the William Carlos Williams Center for the Arts. That's something I was,
yeah. So that there is a small old vaudeville era theater in my town that was in disrepair, and myself, my family are a huge fan of the arts. No big surprise there. I'm an art director background. And when we came to town, I live in New Jersey, close to Montclair. They have amazing theaters there. And we thought, wow, this theater has such beautiful potential. The kids could walk to it. We can walk to it. And so we, a little group of us got together, started petitioning. And I, come from a long line of a union family and an activist background. And so it seemed very obvious to just, ignite a spark in a town that you just moved to, and try to get this theater back up and running. And it's been about 7 years that we've been working on it. Was on the board. It did find a new owner. And so they're working through all of that, but hopefully it'll come back.
I love that. I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, it's people like you that inspire people like me and our listeners and the people that watch to, we talk about wanting to do those things, and yet you guys, the family, stroll into town and just do it. I love that. I mean, it's brilliant. It is inspiring. Thank you for that. I read in an article you once said, I always remember my art teachers liking what I did, but I was often confused because my work never looked like the other students. I look back now and I realized that by compensating for my lack of traditional skills, it forced me to, in unique ways, into unique ways of being creative. I love that. Talk to me about that.
So articulate. Wow. Wow. Wow.
I love that. But it's, for me, I think, it's funny because I say this to Addison a lot. I say this to a lot of people that I've been painting. I call myself an artist since I was a little kid. My parents, just in an effort to get me out of the house because I was so energetic and I was just so much full on. So they sent me to this art school, but I'm not an artist. I'm not very good. But I embrace it in a way that I think I could be Picasso, but I'm certainly not. But in any event, that's what it kind of led me to. So explain that or talk to me about that. I love that.
I mean, it's funny. You see it with runners too, right? Where people are like, well, I'm not a runner. I just run. It's like, well, no, you are a runner because you run. I'm not an artist because I can't paint. It's like, well, no, you are because you use your brain and use your creativity. But as a kid, there weren't very many outlets for artistic development. I went to a public school. It was a good public school, but we had painting, drawing, the basics. This was right before the dawn of Adobe and computer arts, and I couldn't draw. I can't draw. I don't paint. I don't sculpt. That's why I leaned into photography. That's why I leaned into color. That's why I leaned into design. I loved it. I love coming up with ideas. But I couldn't physically create it. That was such it held me back. So I leaned into collage. I leaned into, like I said, photography. I leaned into multimedia approaches to things because I was hiding the fact that I couldn't draw or paint. And I went to SVA, and the first year I had to all the classes were drawing and painting. And I was like, oh no, bail out. My parents were like, I told you not to go to art school. And in that, I worked with Richard Wilde, and he had this class about conceptual thinking. And man, that was like, I loved it. I loved it. And all you had to do is just conceptually come up with answers to random problems. How can type be looked at in this way, and things like that. So yes, I think most of my life I've gone with, a lot of my success has been because I've felt as though I've had to hide a particular part of myself. And it's kind of created a new outlet that maybe other people hadn't looked at.
I love that. I mean, again, that's what's so great about this series, is that if just one person hears this story of yours and inspires them to think differently, and open up their world to such a creative, possibility, I think is, a win-win. So I thank you for that. I really love that. Thank you so much. I'm going to go on to Quinnton. So Quinnton, you were kind of interesting too. Like, so you did let me in on your Instagram, and I think your first Instagram was February 6, 2012. And it said last night in Chicago. That was your first post on Instagram. There was a sconce on the wall, and it said hashtag scared. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't know if I remember that, but oh my goodness, interesting.
But I love it. I love the hashtag scared. Leaving Chicago the last night, I was like, oh my God, like, is he going off to a job? What is he doing? Going to the army or what?
And you said that was 2012, right?
2012, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
That's a long time ago. That's not.
Yeah, I know. It's not fair.
I mean,
it's not fair.
Sort of.
Well, okay, so I'll go on to one other thing. So the next thing I saw was Walker and Company 2013.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was that and that was a new job, right?
That was a new job. Yeah. That was well. So I started with Walker and Company, I want to say 2015, but I might have started creating content for them like 2013 or so. I was still in the advertising space. But Walker and Company is a startup CPG brand that actually was acquired by Procter & Gamble. So wow. I ended up going there as a UI UX designer and then leading design. But yeah, no, I'm trying to remember back to that Chicago post. I'm like, what was I scared about? I mean, there was a lot there.
I think a lot, yeah, but I think a lot of things happened in 2012, because there was like a national dance day in 2012.
Oh my God, you went deep. Oh my God. Okay.
I was so interested. Like, are you a dancer? Like, are you?
So I really resonated with Shayne's story because in some ways I was a suppressed creative growing up. And I come from a very creative family. So musical family. My mom was a singer. My grandfather was an illustrator. My grandmother was a singer. My older brother is a musician. And my twin brother, because I have a twin brother, he is also very artistic. I mean, one of the best illustrators that I know. And so as a kid, I thought, oh, maybe I missed the creative bug, not realizing that my gift was in design, in curation, thinking a little bit more about applied art. Growing up, I was the math and science kid. So I did everything from math and science and excelled at that and excelled at chemistry, ended up going to MIT. And undergrad, I was mechanical engineering. But I took an architecture course and slowly started to realize that, no, I was a little bit more creative or connected to the creative path than I thought I was. I just didn't have affirming voices, or I didn't have necessarily the space to explore that creativity. So in college, I went and danced on a dance team. I took up photography. I would go and visit my very creative older brother, who at the time was a fashion journalist in New York. So I would go up and down from Boston to New York. And I started to just really kind of curate an experience that ultimately led me to take an advertising job out of school versus what the traditional path was. I was going to be on some oil rig or, be some manufacturing plant, right? So I deeply resonate with what Shayne's path was, and in feeling like maybe I didn't know my creative voice early on, but over time, something just kept pulling at me. And I was trying to be very intentional about the type of experiences that I had too.
I mean, look, it's no wonder you two are leaders. It's like, that's what you do. That's what leaders do, is they find the way to best show up and show up for, their clients or their team or whoever it might be. I know you also were a Gates Millennium Scholarship recipient.
Yes.
That's pretty amazing too, right?
Yes, I remember having a very sobering conversation with my mother in high school. And I think this is why the STEM track was very much so ingrained in me. She said, baby, I can't pay for college. And your older brother was the first person to go to school. We incurred a lot of debt. I don't know how I'm going to be able to do this. And I said, well, Ma, don't worry about it. I'm going to go to school for free and I'll figure it out. And I didn't know if that was going to be a scholarship-based thing. Or I didn't know if it was going to be athletics, because I was also a baseball player, wrestler. I did a lot. I was doing a lot in school. But I was driven to realize this dream of going to college for free. And it wasn't until my rising senior year, so it was the summer between junior year and senior year, I got into a magnet program that was at MIT. So it was a 6-week program that introduced high achieving Black and brown kids from across the country and exposed them to STEM. So I got into that program and I learned about the Gates Millennium Scholarship through that program. And if I never would have applied to that program, or even just been with some of those counselors, those mentors that actually put me on track for that STEM kind of curriculum, I wouldn't have gotten school paid for. So thankfully I got school paid for, because I ultimately didn't use the engineering degree. But yeah, wow. I remember that conversation very clearly.
I love it. Well, thank you both for sharing a little bit of your insights. I hope I didn't dig too deep, but you guys are just brilliant. And I love where you came from and where you are today. So let's start with the first question. It's going to go to you, Shayne. What cultural event during your lifetime has had the biggest impact on who you are today? It could be anything.
It's a tough one. Because we're so impacted by cultural events you don't even realize, and I am very young, so I haven't lived through many. No. I'm so young. I mean,
I love that. Humble, honest.
But I was thinking about this, and I would have to say the Women's March. So after Trump was elected. And so I think that was I come from a family. I'm one of 3 girls, and my mother is worked, and both my parents worked. My father worked nights, so that we could take care of us during the day. My mother worked, put herself through school to get her doctorate. So it's an intense family, to say the least. But we, it was the first time that me and my 2 sisters and my mother all were very close family. It was the first time that all the women, we all connected. We all went somewhere. We all bonded over this. I think in my career and in my mother's career, it was a very male focused career, and she was in education, in administration. And so it was a very male focused career. So very often we did not embrace our femininity at work. And so after the Women's March, that was something where we started to kind of embrace it and be proud of it. And you start to see it more at work, where people were speaking up a little bit more about not being okay with certain things. And I mean, I always thought, oh, well, I probably won't have a job when I hit 40 because I'm a woman in advertising. That's just kind of the way it's going to go. And then after that, it kind of opened up the aperture a bit. And it's like, okay, now maybe 50. No. But so, and even on a different note, my mother, just the kind of the headspace that I've always been in is my mother, the reason for my name is she felt as though if I had a female name on my resume, that I wouldn't have the opportunities that I might have now. And so all of my sisters, me and all my sisters have male names. So it's always been something that's been a part of us. And then that Women's March was probably the one moment where the door cracked open. And I started, along with my sisters and my mother, started to kind of be more unapologetic.
Wow. I mean, unpacking that could take a long time. However, so thank you for it. But my question is, were there lead up conversations? Was there as the election happened, and how was that conversation when you decided to go? What was that?
It was so it's funny because I happened to be on a was I a shoot? Yeah, I was on a shoot in London when the election was going on. My one sister lives in Copenhagen. My other sister lives in New Jersey. My mother lives in New Jersey, and we all were really upset. I'll just say the outcome of that. And so there was, I mean, I'm sure we all lived through it. So there was just a moment of lots of protesting and activation around that. And so, yes, we're very, like I said, activist kind of family. And so we just felt like this was something we needed to do. And it was interesting because we left my dad at home, like we're a very tight knit family, but it was like, no, this is something that we have to do. And he was super supportive. My husband watched the kids, her husband watched the kids. And it was just something that it was, like I said, it was the first time in all of our years together that we ever did anything just the four of us, just the women. And so, yeah, I mean, lots of conversation obviously took part around that time. But that was kind of a bit of the powder keg, I think, that opened it all up for me personally.
Right. I love that. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's quite extraordinary story. What about you, Quinnton? What was that cultural event during your lifetime that, made the biggest impact?
Yeah, Shayne, your answer was so beautiful because it took me back, and I wasn't even expecting to go here, but it took me back to moments where I had experienced kind of Black trauma at scale. So my upbringing, working class, Black family in Chicago or just outside of Chicago. So I was very, very attuned to what Black life meant to be or my existence was meant to be in this country. So, and even navigating kind of a predominantly white college, all these different things. It was always something that I lived day to day, but never saw pain displayed at scale in a very visible and tangible way with, the events or the killings of Black folks and it being displayed on social media. And one moment that I could remember very clearly, I was Digitas, New York, and I was in, an office space high up on Park Avenue. And when the news broke about Eric Garner, and I think it was about 2014 or so, who was choked, and I think it was Staten Island or I can't remember exactly the location, but I remember being in New York and seeing the news display this in the lobby of my agency, and like being so alone in the grief and the pain that I felt. It almost felt like the world just kept moving outside of this like very visual display of Black trauma and Black grief. And I think that was where I over the remaining week, because there was starting to be protests and there were protests on Park Avenue, and I remember watching those protests from my tower, essentially having this inner conversation about, should I be there with them? Should I be there in my work with them? Like what about my life can I get? What in my life can I give to be of service to my people in a way that I had never felt before? And I think that moment, or at least experiencing what I experienced in context at that advertising agency, I committed to myself, well, I think it's time for me to use my creative gifts to tell stories that matter to me, that matter to my community, but could include people in those conversations, right? Not in spite of, but with. And Walker and Company brands at the time, they had started to gain some momentum in the market as a disruptor CPG company that was making products and services for people of color specifically. And I was like, I can tell those stories, and I can tell those stories in the ways that I think other people can't. And so I started to move towards trying to find work that could allow me to be an activist or an advocate of my people, but do it in a very authentic and connected way.
Wow. I'm glad you went there. I really am, because it's funny. It's really kind of the same story, both of you, because, Shayne, you said you left, your husband and they left their husband. But the truth is the fact that you utilized and your husband was there to support you in that moment. How great is that gift, and how inspiring is that? So, you really took that moment and said, you know what, it is for me, but it's about all of us. And for you as well, Quinnton, looking down, in that, that ivory, that ivory tower, looking down in Park Avenue and really making a decision is, again, it's no shock, I'm sure, to people that will see this, that know you, that you guys are great leaders and have already inspired. If we stopped here, I think it would be an inspiring moment. But with that, thank you. I'm going to let Addison do the second question.
Yeah, I'm taking that question too. Is there a place or like a safe space or an activity that you do where you tend to find your best creative inspiration? Somewhere maybe you hide away, somewhere that's loud and noisy. Quinnton, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so if anyone knows me, I carry this little guy with me all the time. Yeah, Shayne, I touched to know that you're a photographer.
But that's okay.
Oh yeah. So my first camera, I actually learned digital and then went to analog. First camera was D90. And a portrait that I actually recently posted on LinkedIn was a portrait that I took of classmates because I took a photography class, and the assignment was showcase the future, or tell a story about the future. And for me, it was like, oh, well, I'm going to tell the story of my friends who I believe are the future leaders of this country. And one is a fighter pilot and engineer with the Air Force. The other one is doctor of chemical engineering. Another one is like a creative technologist. Like, these were people who, like, on the surface, they look just like Black kids, Black men, but they have so much richness and so much depth to them. And I think for me, photography has been my outlet to see the world and to really be very focused on how what my relationship is to the world and how I see the world and how I am responsible for telling stories that hold people in the highest regard and show the dignity of their lives. And so my activity is to take a photo walk. And so what that means is I'll go in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, have my camera with me, just get quiet. If there's something that is interesting to me or aligns with kind of the ideas that I'm thinking about, whether it's my business or some other project, I'll snap a photo. And right now I'm shooting film, so this is 35 millimeter. I think the film that I have is Superior 400, and so it's color. And I'll gradually shoot a roll of film over a month or so, and then I'll process the film, and maybe I'll share the work, maybe I won't, but it's like my meditation to go out and walk and take photos.
Did like you moving to film kind of is that kind of linked to the meditative side of that, like
Absolutely.
Not having an instant
Absolutely. So I took some photo classes in school, but I really didn't get serious about photography until after I left school. And I had a private lesson with an instructor. And, the big three, ISO, aperture, shutter speed, she coached me on how do you develop a real relationship with the instrument that is the camera. and be in tune with it, so that like you're not rushing to take the shot. You're really using it as an extension of how you see the world. And I think analog has slowed me down in my process. Digital, I'll take 30 photos or 30 shots of the same composition because I'm looking for the perfect composition. But with analog, I can't see what I take. I'm trusting my instincts. I'm trusting my understanding of light, of the camera, the tool itself. And that's a part of the meditation. It's really kind of to dig deep and say, okay, this is probably going to be a little bit lower of an exposure, but why is it a low exposure? And why do I choose to shoot it at this moment? And who are the people, or who are the subjects that I'm trying to, tell the story of? So, yeah.
Does it make you kind of happier with the end result as well? The fact
Oh,
that
absolutely. It makes me, it's Christmas every time I get my scans back. It is Christmas.
How about you, Shayne?
I love what you're saying, Quinnton. It's like you're reminded of like why we both love photography. Like there's oftentimes, it's funny because I have 2 little kids, and so bringing them to museums even. I used to, now they're a little older, but I would give them cameras because I was like, I know they're going to find this boring in some way, shape, or form. But if I give them cameras, then they're looking through a different viewpoint. So it's like, I totally know what you mean. And then we'd go home and like take a look. But for me, I don't have a real outlet. My outlet is I'm an oversharer. So I talk it through. I just, I love people. Like I genuinely, truly am inspired by kids all the time. I will many a night, I will tell my children, this is what I have to figure out at work, or this is what I'm trying, and they'll have very unique responses to it.
Wow.
Or, I mean, many times I'll be out with friends who have they're nowhere near my career, nowhere near my background, and I will just talk to them. I don't know if they enjoy this about me, but, or, I love working it through, like, so if I'm stuck, I need to get up, I need to talk to someone, I need to just work it out, and I'll grab anyone, but that is my process. That's always been my process. I've never been the person, silence makes me anxious. So that's part of my process. But then on the flip side, I would say the thing that I absolutely love, and I'm always getting inspired by, is documentaries. Like if you know me, it's like I have a massive Excel document of like every documentary and every one I've watched, the ones I need to watch, whenever Oscars come out, like I'm quite obsessive about it. And I share it with everyone, so that's, if I really had to pick a medium that I went to, if I can't pick people, I would say documentaries 100%, because that gives you that kind of real lived experience.
Okay. Where does the documentary obsession come from? Just gradually over time? Okay.
I don't know. And it does spill into reality TV. I'm not that classy. I do love a good reality show. Yeah. I love me some Bravo. But no, I don't know what it is. I don't know. I think I just genuinely am fascinated by people. Like, and that sounds silly, but I'm just fascinated by lived experiences and how things come about, and storytelling. And just, I think too, is that I had a very difficult time reading when I was young. And so audiobooks were not really around, but and YouTube was definitely not around. So documentaries like PBS, like that was kind of where I got information. That's how I learn more quickly, is through example and through that. So that's probably why I'm into documentaries.
And are your kids good listeners?
No.
No.
Not at all. One was just grounded last night because of that.
Okay, very good. This is now
I love
recorded forever. So
I love that. Well, for me, like I love documentaries as well, but I love great directors who direct great documentaries. So maybe we can I can come back to you and get a list. I'm always looking for great talent, but
Yeah.
both really amazing answers. There was one other thing. What was the Griot project? The Grot
Griot.
project?
Oh,
Wait,
Griot.
the Griot.
Project.
What is that?
So one of my good friends years ago, he saw that I loved photography. He loved, at the time I was doing like a lot of street portraitures or like street fashion portraitures. And he said, "You're a griot." I said, "What is a griot?" He's like, "That's a of the West African tradition. It's a traveling storyteller. They would go around and they sing the stories, or play instruments, very specific instruments, but tell the stories of their people. And they were the gatekeepers of history, but then also like they're the elders and the wise folks in the communities." And I said, "Oh, that's cool. I'm a griot." And so I started using. And I was like, "Oh, technology is my medium, or advertising is my medium, or photography is my medium." And I started to call myself the griot, or griot. I would make it as a part of my practice to share the story of my people, because at one time I was young. I was trying to chase the celebrities. I was trying to chase the popular kids and take photographs of everything that I thought was worthy of sharing. But I started to, when my friend kind of gave me that inspiration, and I started to reflect on my life, I said, my life is enough. My life is good. The people that are in my life deserve their stories to be told and heard too. And so I started to kind of call myself that, and I, call the work that I share more of like the Griot Project. So it's like in progress. It's not finished. It's kind of an ongoing story format.
I love it. Thanks for sharing that. I love it. The third question is there any one thing in and out of work that tests your patience, personally or professionally? I will go with Shayne.
Your kids?
I know. The fact that my kids don't listen. No.
You're on mute, Shayne.
Yes, 100%. Time. Time is against me in every way, shape, or form. I just feel like there's just not enough time. There's not enough time to be inspired. There's not enough time to do the work that we want to do and still make mistakes. My friend said that the other day. He's like, when we were coming up through this, we had enough time to produce things, to think of things, make mistakes, refine. And I think if, things that test my patience, there's tons.
Right.
But really, I think it comes down to being pressured when there's not enough time to do it in a way that I feel is what is required. We even had a call the other day, which with clients, where we had to go back to them and said, we can't stand by this if we don't have enough time to properly do it. And to their credit, they said, then we have to give you more time.
Wow.
And not often do you have that kind of relationship with a partner and a creative partner and a client. And so that is the one thing that just always, when it really comes down to, when you strip it back, like, why am I so upset about this? Why am I upset about this? It's generally because I feel that pressure to not have enough time to still be a good mom, still be a good friend, still be a good wife, still be the CCO, that's the thing that tests my patience the most.
Wow. I mean, look, I think we all can agree that one of the learnings, I think, for all of us during the pandemic was, how do you deal with time? Because time kind of became irrelevant because it was 24/7. If you didn't do something about it, compartmentalize your kids for the first time, dig a garden, pick a flower or whatever it was. So I find that pretty amazing, particularly with somebody at your level. Like, it must be hard, like, to ask for that more time. It's
a weird one to ask for. We're always asking for more budget.
Yeah.
And there was a project that I was working on with a team, and we always say like, well, money can fix anything. And we were like, not this time. Not this time.
That's great.
Like, no, we literally don't have enough time in the day to do it. And I think more and more, like as a leader, trying to understand when to raise that flag and when to be heard during that. And it's so funny because it was late last night that we talked with this team who heard us, because they knew that we would never have done it if the product wasn't going to come out great. And it stinks, because it's, you never want to say that you can't do something, especially in our careers. We don't exercise that muscle very often. But this time I think we dodged something.
That feels good in itself, for sure.
Yeah, it did.
What about you, Quinnton?
Yeah, Shayne, I mean, you're spot on. And I'm so inspired when I hear you talk about some of the challenges that you go through as a leader. I mean, for me, it's very similar to you. I love people. I'm in the business because I love people. I love different shapes of people. I love people who think very differently. And I'm in community constantly with people who are very different from me. But people are also probably the most complex, hardest humans or beings to deal with on a consistent basis, because you never know sometimes what personality you'll get that day. You never know if the person is invested in a communal experience in that moment, or if they're more so thinking about themselves. And so navigating and making sure that I develop a level of empathy, or at least have a level of empathy when I'm navigating tough conversations with people, and making sure that I exercise patience in how I troubleshoot people who are just having a bad day, and making sure that I know that it's not me that's causing it, but it's something that is happening in their lives, and their lives are very complex. It's just holding spaces for humans is probably the most difficult thing of being a leader. And then when you're scaling it, I'm sure leading massive organizations, how do you do that, at scale? How do you hold empathy at scale, and know when to exercise compassion, know when to be firm, etc. So for me, it's developing patience as a leader dealing with very, very colorful people.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. It is a very daunting kind of question. How do you lead in scale like that? And again, both of those are amazing answers. So we're going to go on to number 4. This one kind of came from a talk that I heard about when we're born as artists and creatives, and nothing is unattainable. It all is great. And then as you get older, and if you're a male, you're squashed because of the peer pressure to do sports. Even though you don't like sports, you like to dance, or maybe you like to do whatever. And so women, I think for females, the same thing. It's like you're kind of peer pressured out of being this entity that sings songs and dances like as if nobody's like watching. But as you get older, and as you both have gotten older, is there that one thing that makes you stand out? Like, is there that one thing that you can go back to your childhood and was like, you know what, I was such this, and then something happened and it just, I veered off. Like, what is that one thing that makes you stand out today? If that makes sense. And we'll go with you, Shayne.
Oh. No. But I have to say, it's been so, it's funny, I keep forgetting we're on a panel, because and in a discussion, because I have to say I feel the same way. The answers that you've been saying, it's like I'm just like ingrained in them, and I'm like, oh my God, I love that, I want to write that down. And I'm like, oh wait, we're we're being recorded, I have to be more professional. Gosh, what makes me stand out? It's funny. I felt as though I stood out for so long that I did. I was I was not from Manhattan. I wasn't from Brooklyn. I was from Jersey. I was a lady. You know, I couldn't draw. I couldn't. So there were so many things that I felt as though I hated the idea of standing out, even though I'm talkative and bubbly, and you know, people would say, "Oh, but you like being, you know, on stage or whatever." All of those things I hid. Everything I hid. I wouldn't, you know, so the idea of standing out was not what I ever wanted. I wanted to fit in. So to your point, that question, I only think in the last 4 years, I've been allowing that to be like allowing myself to be different. And for me, different isn't what I think people would normally think is what would make me stand out. But being a mom in this career is different, you know, and saying, you know, like, and being from New Jersey, that might not be the sexiest place, is different, you know, not being from Brooklyn. When everyone, I would always think, it's like when everyone was at the edit, being like, "Oh, have you tried this cafe? Did you just try this cafe?" And I'm like, "Nope." It's like, "Nope, I live over there." You know, so all of the things that made me different, I was really embarrassed of, you know, I tried to hide. And only until recently have I started to embrace them. And it feels a lot better. You know, it feels a lot better. I'm much more unapologetic. But I think the one thing that probably does inherently make me stand out is that I am, for good or bad, I'm very candid. I connect through conversation. I think if anybody who knows me well, is that that is what makes me different. I do like to talk a lot. I do. That is, I don't know if there's other things that, you know, I always felt like, oh, I have to have tattoos, or I have to do this, or I have to dye my hair, or, you know, like, or cut it a half off. But really what makes me different is being very ordinary, I feel like.
I love that. I cannot tell you how brilliant that is, because, you know, there's so many people that struggle, you know, older, younger, trying to figure out who does the world want them to be, instead of going inward and saying, who am I? You know, who do I want me to be? And the fact that you found that answer and have owned it and embraced it and become your authentic self in a way that other people that you lead or on your team feel like they know the real you and can be inspired by, that is a testament to, again, probably a family that allowed you to talk as much as you did, probably supported you in your quest to be like everybody else, and said, "Don't worry, you're great and wonderful the way you are." I love that. It's really, truly inspiring. Thank you so much for that. And I, when I read about you, I do feel like the past 4-5 years you have embraced you know, lockjaw, like an alligator from the, you know, crocodile, your life. And I think it changes people, and one only hopes that as we grow into our life and our journey, that we somehow find people that we have touched, and they tell us that. And I always say to people, please tell the people that have affected you and touched you and inspired you, tell them, because they will never know unless you do. So for that, I hope you get that present. But thank you. Quinnton, what about you?
I'm over here having church. I'm feeling seen. So Shayne, I mean, very similar to you. For me, the greatest gift that I'm reminded of by my mother, by my family, is that I was incredibly sensitive as a kid. And now I'm learning that's more empathic. So being in tune with feelings. Also, I struggled early on with reading. So for me, coming from a household where the performance was everything, and the way in which you communicate non-verbally is just as important as when you communicate verbally, I was learning how to, or I was around these bigger than life presences. My mom was a performer, again, my older brother, a performer. I was experiencing this duality of the performance, but then the person too. and what the process and the genius it was for someone to be this person and then transform into this other person or this idea. And so for me, being sensitive and being able to take in a lot of different people, a lot of different stories, a lot of different information. A lot of people don't know, but growing up, 3 boys, single mother. I lived with my grandmother as well. So we had a 2-parent household, but it was non-traditional. My older brother, who is queer, he's 7 years older than me, queer. He was openly queer since he was younger, which wasn't in the 90s where I grew up a thing. He was also a father figure. So he, I think both the sensitivity and the richness of my story and my experience has informed the way in which I take these risks, so starting a company that is Black owned, but you don't want to work on just Black things. Like who does that in advertising, right? Or, hey, I'm going to get an engineering degree, but I don't want to do engineering. Like, I think part of that is being reminded of the sensitivity, the sensibility of, your story is enough, your experience is enough, the people around you are brilliant. So like lean into that, be vulnerable, share those things, because whether you like it or not, you're going to feel it all anyway.
That's so good. That is so,
Wow.
So great.
Wow. Really well said. I mean, I do think, again, there's many things that I'm proud, partnering with LBB, Addison, who's a great co-host with, is in the hopes of having great leaders like you talk freely and honestly in a way that anybody that wants to be in this business, who follows you on Instagram, who wants to be in advertising, can hear your story. And in somehow, some way, as you, a young Black man, didn't see, people like you, can hear from you guys that there are people like you, are like them, and you are leaders. And it really inspiring today. You guys are inspiring. I'm not going to cry, I swear to God.
No, man, I was, again, to sensitivity. I caught myself just now.
I know Shayne's like, what the hell? Shut up.
No, when you start talking, I was like, I got goosebumps. I was like, oh.
Yeah. So there's a bonus, but I don't know what time is like for you guys. We have a little bit more time.
I'm good.
So as a leader, as we were just saying, time is precious. Is there a system that you both follow, or a philosophy that you guys follow that helps you to, make the best of whatever time you have? And I know I'm going to go with Shayne because I know that's a problematic in and of itself. But is there how do you divide your, and conquer your time during the day?
I'm always looking for the answer to this. I don't have it. So there's that. But I know myself. It's funny because the person who helps me organize my schedule and stuff had said, he's like, oh yeah, you do way better under pressure. I wait till the last minute. Don't tell my kids. I'm not great at that. So my process is procrastination. No, my process is burning through it. It's like, I want to start as late as possible and end as early as possible. Those are the goals.
Yeah.
But I don't want a break in between, because I have it's like severance. It's like I'm in it. And when I'm in it, I'm in it. And I have like blinders on. So the minute I start, I go straight through. Like I'll eat at my desk. I know people don't like that. I know people don't, but for me, burn through it all and then shut it down. That's the only process that I figured out. I don't know if it's good, but I do try to keep and to that point, I try to keep as much of my weekend.
Right.
That's where it's like, I've always said, like, I once had a job where I only had one kid, but I was going to have another one. I only have 2. It sounds like I have like a whole litter, but it's like, I was doing 4 days a week. I worked on like, let me have 4 days a week. And I was like, I will work till I will just go around the clock so that I can have 1 day or 2 days or 3 days of just being with blinders on with my family,
Presence.
with my friends.
Yeah.
So that's my process, is like shut it down. Like if you email me on the weekend, I probably am not looking at it. You probably have to text me.
In that quest to get it done, how do you bring your team along with you, or how do they deal with, is there
I don't know.
do they ever say like slow down, like you go too fast?
Yeah, probably. I'm working on it. I'm not a perfect
No, I wasn't saying that the bad, wasn't judging. I'm just asking.
No, I know you're not. No, I know you're not.
Okay.
I would say what what we did at work, we did it and then I broke all the rules. So, but it was the fact of like at 8 o'clock, we have a reminder on all of our emails to not send emails. Why it says it's called Can It Wait?
Yeah.
And it lets you it comes up at 8 o'clock and it's like, do you really need to send it? Now, mind you, we started that and I was awesome at it. And then I stopped and then I screwed up. And so just recently I've started using because the problem was on the phone, and now I'm getting too granular, but on the phone, you couldn't do send laters.
Yeah,
so
right.
Send it, but I recognized how awful that felt. And if I got an email from my boss, I would respond if it was 11. So we are really trying wholeheartedly as a company to do the send laters. It's a small thing, but it's so important to know that you don't have 100 emails on a Saturday morning means so much, so it can wait till Monday, most likely. And then if it is an emergency, it's an emergency.
Yeah, that's funny. I think early on in 5 and 30, that was a big question because we have to trust the people that we hire and that we work with to know what's important and what's not important. And if you make a decision that it's not important and I thought it was important, I'll stand behind you 100%. Yeah. So yeah. I think, I think everybody broke that rule. But I think taking time is really, really important. So thank you for that. What about you, Quinnton?
Yeah, I'm very similar. I'm a creatively intense person. So when I have my blinders on, I'm in it and I go start to finish. I'm usually doing everything now that I run a startup. So the intensity for me is quite regular, but one of the things that I've been trying to work on with my therapist, with my coaches, and even my wife, is we call it a rhythm, not a routine. So routine, same thing every day, 7 days a week, etc. For me, it's okay, being really in tune with myself of, okay, there might be a routine that I need to have that day, but what can I easily get into rhythm with? What can I easily not get into rhythm with? Or what is going to be really difficult for me to be in rhythm with? So the only thing that is routine every day is when I wake up, I'm checking in with myself. So I take a quick 15 minutes to just understand where my body is, how I'm feeling. Some people call it meditation. I call it a check-in. And from there, based on what the day, because my calendar, I'm looking at it right now, it's giving me the heebie-jeebies. I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to get into rhythm.
I know, right?
Just talking to people all day. Like, I'm like, okay, that's what I got to do today. And yeah, I'm in a really unique space, just building the plane while we're flying it. So I will have more grounded routine. I believe I'll have more of a grounded routine in the next few months, but yeah, my team is very patient with me because there are days where I'm still kind of a creative director in the work, but I'm also running the company, and my schedule is back to back. I'm on sales calls, I'm on creative calls, I'm on one-on-ones, and then at the end of the day I'm like, oh shit, I got some work.
You're an adult.
So yeah, I try to catch the rhythm of the day.
Yeah, I think that's a good phrase. Good phrase. It's a rhythm. It's not a routine. That's amazing. I saw this. I don't know if this is relevant to this conversation, but I saw this morning, Jamie Lee Curtis, who's been in this business, a legend, 64 years old, and she's been invited to some dinner that starts at 7 o'clock for the Academy Awards, and she's like, no. Mama goes to sleep at 7 o'clock. I mean, I thought like, oh my God, this is crazy. But she went on to say, like, you know what? The reporter said, like, what do you think about are you gonna be able to stay up for the Oscars and all that? She goes, you know what? I don't think about that kind of stuff. I stay in the moment. She's sober. She's like, I just don't think about that. I like stay where I am at the moment. I have to tell you guys, you are all inspiring. There is one bonus question. It probably will take like 5 minutes. I don't know if you want to do it, Shayne. I know you're both very busy.
No, I
But,
added buffer time just in case.
I love
Me
that.
too.
See, that's why you guys are.
I
who
did
you
not
are.
think of that. Someone knows my schedule, Lee, who is
I love it. I
That could have
love
been
it.
the
my
answer
back.
to your last question, by the way.
But I
Just-
am gonna take Quinnton that 15-minute morning check-in on myself.
Mm.
I'm gonna totally take that.
With that, Addison.
And it's not perfect either, because some days my mind is racing. So I'm still thinking about the things that are happening from yesterday. Some days I wake up and I just like, oh, okay, I don't have anything to think about. But it's just really about catching the rhythm.
I like
Yeah.
your term, by the way, of just checking in, because I feel
Mhm.
like for many people, just the word meditation is quite alien and sounds
Oh
like
yeah.
not very relatable and just like something they wouldn't do. I'm, to be honest, not one of those people, but I still, term checking in is essentially what it is, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last question is, if you could choose 4 people dead or alive. We've all heard this question, but I think it may be relevant with you guys. Dead or alive, and you're throwing a dinner party. Who would you invite to this dinner party? Quinnton.
Yeah. So I thought about this question, and it stumped me for at least 3 days. I won't even lie to you, because we got these questions early. And then I had a conversation with my mother last night, and I got inspired. I was like, oh, I know who I'm going to do, just because of who my mom is and the way that she connects with me. And now that I'm an adult child now. 3 people would be Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Bell Hooks, and my grandmother, Joan Margaret. And
Oh, wow.
why? These were the 4 most important Black women in my mother's life that shaped her identity and ultimately her relationship with her sons, particularly Bell Hooks, who talks a lot about the ethics of love. And my grandmother was such an important anchor for me, almost as a parent, that when I thought about the question, I was like, yeah, it's these groups of women. I just want to sit at their feet, let them talk, and just, because that was my experience growing up. Actually, my mom, her friends, I would be the little kid just kind of listening to everything that was happening in the conversations, whether we were at church, whether we were in the house. And these just would be these amazing, brilliant women that at some points in their lives, they experienced some level of oppression or some level of hardship, but they still were brilliant, and they still showed up, and they still gave everything that they needed to give to us as their children. So these would be the women that I call back to the table.
I would love to be at that dinner table. One of my favorite quotes is when you give, and when you learn, teach. It's my Dr. Maya Angelou. And I think that, when you think back at the people that you want to like have dinner with and you want to learn from, it's inspiring that there are people that, we just never had an opportunity to, like your grandmother, to like ask those questions. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. What about you, Shayne?
It's very funny. I had a hard time coming up with mine. But then we have a similar answer. Mine is my grandmother. And my 2 kids. It's just like so close to my grandmother growing up, so close. She was just a fireball. Like, she was the first female Teamster official, so you could imagine the attitude and confidence and everything that you have to have in that job. And family was everything, Jersey Italian, so you could imagine. So it's like family is everything. And so she loved us to death, like me and my sisters and my mother. And so the fact that she never saw my kids, it's much more personal. Like it's just that I would, for one 1 second, if I could give anything, that's what I would give it for. I would love that.
Isn't that amazing?
I was like, oh wait, can I? Oh wait, you can't. Like I was like, I was hard enough. I was like, and I can't. That would be mine. But it's funny that we both have such connections to our grandmothers.
Yeah, it is. Guys, Addison, you want any last things to say?
All good on my front. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, guys, I got to tell you, time is so important. It's so valuable. And for you guys to spend this time with us, LBB and Great Gardens USA, myself, I am inspired by you guys. And you have to know that, we do this because we want other people to hear great leaders and what they think and how they feel and what makes them tick and cry. And you guys covered the gamut today. Quinnton, unbelievable. Shayne, thank you so much. Really, truly, just amazing.